Welcome to the Forest Overstory podcast. This podcast explores forest stewardship in the Pacific Northwest, helping landowners and professionals gain new insights and information in the field of forest management. The Forest Overstory is a product of the Washington State University Extension Forestry program and is supported by the Washington Department of Natural Resources and the Society of American Foresters. All right, welcome back, listeners, and happy November. I'm Patrick Schultz, Extension Forester with Washington State University and host of the Forest Overstory podcast. We have another great episode in store today featuring some exciting guests to chat with, as usual. But before I get to them, I want to introduce my new co-host for this episode. You may remember her from an earlier episode of the podcast where we talked about Women Owning Woodlands program and her new position with WSU. I am joined by Molly Dar today. Molly, how are you?
Hi, Patrick. Thank you so much for having me on. This is really exciting for me. Hi, everyone. Just to an update, my name is Molly, and I'm the new Forest Health Extension Specialist. I'm based out of the Mount Vernon Northwest Research and Extension Center. So if you're nearby, or even if you're not, please reach out and introduce yourselves.
Awesome. Thanks. For you folks that haven't heard that episode that we did with Molly, I really encourage you to go back and check it out. It was a really fun conversation. And I believe it's episode 17. I should know that, but I don't. So it's somewhere in that area, in that region. Go back and listen to all the episodes. That's a good idea. Those that did hear it do know about Molly's new position, and definitely check her out. Reach out to her for those in her region, and get to know some of the stuff she's doing. But for now, we're excited to have her on and helping me ask some questions of our guests today, who we're very excited to interview. And so rather than ramble on, I think we should just get right into it. So our guests are all from the Washington Department of Natural Resources, more specifically the Service Forestry program. Which is a new program with a lot of capacity to support landowners. To reference another old episode, you may remember when we had Matt Preventure on over a year ago, well over a year ago, I think, actually. And he talked about this program just as it was getting started. And now it's been running for a little while. We're joined by some great people that have been helping carry it out. And so we get to get an idea of what's going on in the ground. So we are joined by Kelsey Ketcheson, Gary Bell, and Ann Favolise. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Patrick. Appreciate the invite.
And I have to ask, I should have asked before, but did I butcher your last name?
You pretty much nailed it. So good job.
That's great.
You butchered
I'll cut this part out, so I won't. What? That's great. Well, I thought we could start by going around the horn and just having each of you tell us a little bit about yourselves, what your position is with the DNR and kind of how you came into it. Kelsey, do you want to get started?
Yeah, sure. So I am the Western Washington Service Forestry Coordinator, and my job is basically to provide support for each of the 4 regions in Western Washington, and to work on a programmatic level, kind of behind the scenes stuff, and then also to partner with Washington State University Extension on different educational programs. I came to this position not directly from WSU, but I actually spent a few years working at WSU Extension in the Puget Sound area. So I'm pretty familiar with the job, and I got to work with a lot of DNR folks at that position. So this has been a nice transition.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet that some of our listeners remember you, maybe from a workshop or a coast planning or something. It's good to have you in the sphere of landowner support again. All right. So how about Gary? Do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks again for having us on, Patrick. So I am Gary Bell. I'm the Forest Resilience District Manager for DNR's Olympic region, which covers Clallam, Jefferson, and a good portion of Grace Harbor County here in Western Washington. I'm part of kind of a 4-pronged team. As mentioned, we have 4 West Side regions, and we have a lot going on in every one of them. But I have 3 fellow district managers that we all coordinate amongst one another heavily, and work with you guys there at WSU and all that too. So um, a little bit about my background. I spent 22 years at the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, prior to coming to DNR about a year and a half ago. Um, and about 14, a little over 14 years I spent as the forest wildlife kind of conservation biologist is probably the most appropriate term, dealing with forest practices and its interactions with wildlife and habitat on the landscape. And that evolved over time into conversations with forest health and a lot of early work that DNR was getting into in the forest health arena, including their Eastside 20-year forest health strategy, and things like the 2020 Forest Action Plan that was developed to encompass Westside forest health issues, and also got involved working with forest health collaboratives and some work with the U.S. Forest Service on the Upper Wenatchee pilot project, and as they were putting the pieces together and planning those projects out for conducting actual forest health treatments on the ground. So.
I think there's maybe 3 or 4 podcast episodes worth of conversation in there.
Oh, definitely.
In
definitely.
your experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's exciting to have someone with that wildlife background to add perspective to the program.
Yeah. It's been really rewarding for me to bring that perspective into the mix of all this, and kind of just the overarching sense of kind of stuff and strategies that we can try and implement to deal with some of these forest health challenges that we have in Western Washington, and while integrating some of the habitat components and the wildlife considerations that we can put in there that do good things for the critters as well as for the people. So it's pretty cool. Really enjoying it.
Great. Nice. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
Anne, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'm a service forester here in PA. I work under Gary, and I basically serve Jefferson and Clallam counties. So kind of boots on the ground work with landowners, setting out treatment areas and treatment specifications for doing fuels reduction projects as well as forest health projects. A little bit about my background. I come to you from Maine. I was working in industrial forestry and some agriculture work, and then I started to get into more private consulting work before moving out to the PNW. And then before that, I worked at a field research station for 7 or 8 years. And that's when I wanted to go back to school, get an ecology degree and Master of Forestry degree, because that was really more in line with my interests. So, yeah, that's me.
Nice. So how do you like the Pacific Northwest?
It's like Maine, but upside down. Similar trees, similar shade tolerances, but then some major differences. So big learning curve when I moved out here, but pretty easy to figure out who goes where.
Right. I like that. That's great. Yeah. When I came from Michigan, I had a similar experience. It's totally different kind of forestry. Cool. Well, thank you both, or both. Thank all three for introducing yourselves. I'm excited to kind of dig into this service forestry program and talk about what it's been looking like on the ground and your experiences with it. Before we do that, I thought maybe one of you could just tell us, the 1,000-foot view. How, what is the service forestry program? What does it do, and what can it offer forest owners? Kelsey, maybe do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So the service forestry program provides technical and financial assistance to landowners. That means we provide free site visits, or maybe phone or email consultations to assess people's resource conditions. We'll help people identify potential problems and opportunities, and then recommend management practices to help achieve people's objectives, whatever those are. Gary mentioned, that they're in the Olympic region. We've got 4 regions, all covering everywhere in Western Washington. So we've got foresters everywhere that can come out to your property if you're a landowner, walk through your woods with you, answer your questions, point out things that they notice. And then from there, we could just make management recommendations, or we could help get you started on a management plan. We also have funding to help write those if that's something that people are eligible for. So it's really working with landowners on what their objectives are. Um, I think one thing I want to point out is that everyone I've ever talked to wants a healthy forest. But what that looks like really depends on the site conditions and what people's landowner objectives are. Some people want to grow, they think a healthy forest is one that'll grow a valuable stand of timber. Other people look at a healthy forest as one that supports wildlife. So depending on what you want, you really want to manage your objectives in your forest differently based on your objectives.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And I think it's important to point out kind of where we're coming from with this new program, because not everyone will know this, but the service forestry program, I was trying to do the math earlier because I think there's like 14 service foresters now in Western Washington. Is that right?
There's actually 18 and almost 20 people on the staff total. And yeah, that's a big upgrade from what we had before. DNR's had a service forestry program for quite a while. It was called forest stewardship for a long time. And for a really long time, all they could support was maybe one or two staff for all of Western Washington. Um, and so people were getting service, but it was a long wait. It was really hard for the stewardship foresters at the time to get everywhere. So in 2021, the legislator passed House Bill 1168, which was about forest health and wildfire reduction. And part of that funding came to landowners. So we were able to add a lot of staff in each of these regions. We were also able to add a financial assistance program where we're able to partially fund different forest health treatments and just alluded to that. So, fuels reduction, thinning, pruning, brush control, things like that. So, just within the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of big improvements to the program.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really exciting because I guess the math is actually quite easy. If there's 20 service foresters now, that's a 20 times growth, right? In the program, which is just so exciting. And I think landowners should be really psyched about it. And so just so I'm understanding fully, these are people that can come out to your property and they can help give you management suggestions. They can help you write a plan as well, or is it kind of working just on recommendations and then moving into maybe cost share to actually get the work done?
If people have capacity, they can help with plans. Um, but more so we're encouraging people to really do the bulk of the work writing their plans. So part of that could be taking one way to do that would be taking a class through WSU Extension. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with coach planning, but that's a course that will walk you through writing the plan. And then we also have, as part of our financial assistance program, for landowners that are eligible, so you need 20 acres or more, we can provide partial funding for you to hire somebody, so a forestry consultant, to write the plan.
So, Kelsey, I wanted to ask a question. Would the landowner then work with the forestry consultant to write that plan based on their let's say, landowner objectives, or would that be sort of just something that where they just sort of sign over that responsibility, and the forestry consultant will make most of the decisions?
It really depends on the landowner, but everyone needs to have some sense of what their objectives are to write that plan, because that's part of the plan, is to list out your objectives and then tie those to the management activities. If you're not able to just list out your objectives, 1, 2, 3, right off the top of your head, that's okay. A lot of landowners, just haven't really thought in that way, or a lot of people are new to land ownership and may want or need a plan for various reasons. So, if you're not able to articulate those right away, that's fine. And that's something that a forester can work with you on. And then, if you hire a forestry consultant, I think just going from what your objectives are, it'll depend on how much you let them just kind of take the reins or how much you work with them.
Okay, that makes sense. It's nice to hear that there's some flexibility there. I know that I would probably, and I've heard this from some landowners in the past, especially novice ones, it's kind of hard to know where to start, and can be sort of an intimidating process to dive in. You feel like sort of like a stranger on your own property. So it's nice to know that there are certain ways that you can kind of beginners can enter it, and then you can kind of explore potentially what your values are together.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that you can talk to, the service foresters about as well. I mean, like Anne has a ton of experience in industrial forestry, um, and private consulting. I mean, we have most of our foresters have, background or specialize in some different thing and have had experience dealing with landowners. And that's just part of it is, I think, helping people really look at their forest, but also kind of envision what they want their forest to be. So that's absolutely part of the services that we provide is just having a conversation about, your forests and what you want it to be, and then just starting to really kind of formulate, break that into, well, what would my objectives be? Let's say I want a healthy forest, but what does that mean? Well, I really want to focus on wildlife, or I really care about the aesthetics, or I really want this to be sustainable to pass down through my family. Just having those conversations is really important, and having that with an expert is really valuable.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, I'm curious, Anne or Gary, whoever wants to, take this one. What are some of the forest pressures in Western Washington that you all are hearing about from these landowners? Like, what are some common issues that forest owners might ask you about that makes this kind of programming necessary?
Yeah, I think that it's a lot of stands that are very dense and have stagnant growth. So they could be stands that were naturally regenerated after the last harvest and then sold off for development. Or sometimes it's a stand that actually was replanted, usually in Doug fir, and it was never thinned. So we see a lot of dense forests here. And then also landowners who have dense forests around their homes and they want to do fuels reduction projects around their homes. And then, of course, we get a lot of people asking questions about cedar dieback and that kind of thing. So a mix of mixed forests or single species stands that were just left to grow on their own.
So, a quick question, just a quick follow up. In my experience working with a lot of forest owners, a lot of times, people take over and they don't have any background in forestry. All they know that is they like trees and they want to be around them, which is great. But they don't often understand that they require management, and there's always kind of an aha moment of, oh, I had no idea that having, you know 400 trees per acre dug fir isn't really healthy in the long run, and that I have to do something. What are what have been your experience so far with forest owners? What have been the stories they've told you as to why they reached out to you in the first place and how they realized that something needed to be done?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is people new to the area and they've never owned forest land, like Kelsey was saying. So they'll reach out to us and they're just like, I don't even know where to start. Or they might already have an idea that they would like to thin, um, and they'd just like a little bit more information on that. And then, of course, they might be interested in cost share assistance. But we do get a lot of landowners who want to live in the woods and they weren't expecting that they're going to have to live with that. So it's a it's a big thing that we see every week.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on there. It really is. It kind of runs the gamut, the different types of forest landowners that approach us. Certainly are some of those that really have absolutely no idea where to start. They just know you know, bought 10 acres and left the big city and they're going to live the country life, right? So they're thinking, they haven't really, thought through all the different components and elements that need to be considered when you own forest land, and if you're wanting to manage your forest responsibly and get the value out of it that you want out of it, whether that's just having a mature old growth forest, or if that's having a stand that is going to be something that you harvest in the future for the grandkids educational expenses or whatever. It's just, we really do kind of get a little bit of everything coming at us. um, a bulk of them, I think, do have some sense of kind of what they want out of their forest, but they don't know how to get there, right? So we can bring that information to them through the service forestry program and help educate them. A lot of what I feel like our job and our work has been, and our experience so far in this first year and a half of the program is really education and filling people in on what they can and shouldn't do, or just all the things that they can consider when they're thinking about how they may want to manage their property. And we get our target are small forest landowners, and for our program definition, that's can be up to 5,000 acres, which is obviously not necessarily small forest landownership in your mind. But a lot of the landowners that come to us do just have those little 2, 3, 5, 10 acre stands, and they want to do good things with them. They want to maintain it for its health, its aesthetics, habitat, a little bit of everything. But not knowing where to start, that's where we can bring that advice to them, and make those stand assessments and figure out what's going on in their stand, and then develop recommendations in tandem with them, and give them options for how they might want to approach their management on their property. So it's just a huge amount of education in my mind, and just really making them aware of what their options are to think about when they're managing their land.
That seems like a really rewarding line of work. And just to see, how certain landowners, like the ones that you mentioned, that are just completely starting from scratch, like really allowing them to, or being able to see them create some ownership and some investment over their property. It just seems like a really cool job. Are there any projects that y'all have completed over the last year that like have really stuck with you, or any specific ones that you really got you fired up, or you were excited about the results?
I can think of a couple that were kind of interesting. Taking alder and thinning it, but having some alder on the landscape and having it almost shelter wood for cedar, um, and with blackberry control. So we met with a landowner who started that project before, had pretty good success with it years ago, and then wanted to do another similar patch of work on her property. And I'm really excited to see how those cedars take off, or what the result will be. But she's kept on the blackberry over the years, and until those trees have overtopped that, and it'd be nice to see how that landscape changes over time. So that was one that really stood out in my mind.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty monumental accomplishment. I know a lot of landowners that I've spoken to just feel completely trapped by their blackberry growth, and it would be pretty empowering to kind of yeah, make the landowner understand that they can actually take back the control.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, that's really cool, Ann.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's kind of veering onto that topic a little bit more. A lot of folks really don't realize how extensive the invasive species challenges are in the peninsula.
Uh,
But we have a ton of Himalayan blackberry across the landscape. We have a ton of Scotch broom issues across the landscape, and people, you know, it seems like the bulk of folks don't really recognize that, and the significance of the issue. So that's a lot of the landowners that we've been working with. We're helping them address those invasive species challenges by, say they, for example, they have acre blackberry patch and they want a forest back on that landscape. We can help them with that brush control and get the site prepped and open back up, and then we can help them get things replanted there and reestablish a forest. That's been an exciting element of it for me. Is there's been a handful of landowners that have come to us. It's like, okay, I have this old pasture farm field that I want to turn back into a forest. I want to have trees on my property again. So, we've been able to help those folks navigate that path towards getting trees reestablished in a chunk of ground. I had a project out near Elma recently where we, set them up to do just that on about a 16-acre chunk of former pasture. So it's really cool that we can get that place, site reforested and get some trees growing back on the landscape. Because in the bigger picture, another element of the program is to keep forests on the landscape and keep those small forest landowners in forestry rather than taking all the trees off of their property and converting it to other uses, where we can help them do that. And that's another, it's a really rewarding part of the program for me, is to help get that, let help facilitate that with landowners and get them the tools and resources they need to do just that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that sentiment a lot, Gary. I think about it. Well, it's my day job, so I think about it all the time. Actually, it's yeah, like what are we doing? How is what we do keep these lands forested? We talk a lot about the issues that are facing forest owners, and sort of the one that we don't talk about a lot because it's really difficult to directly impact is conversion. But if we can encourage forest owners to engage with their forests, make it easier for them to manage, and help people both realize and enhance the value of their forests, then I think there's no way that we're not having an impact on reducing conversion. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be going to work.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's it's part of the day to day for us, and the beauty of our program is the ability to provide the financial assistance through our cost share program that can help those folks that may have some challenges with the resources available to effectively manage their forests. We've had several of the landowners that we've signed up for cost share that just couldn't have done it otherwise. And so it's really cool that we can provide that assistance financially to help those things get done on the landscape scale and at that local property owner scale. So that's another really cool thing about the job.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I think one of the really gratifying things about working with landowners is seeing that a little goes a long way in terms of education, but also management, where you thin your forest, you don't have to go back in the next year and redo it. If you make smart management decisions, those pay off for quite a while. And then also with the education, and I know, Patrick, you've probably seen this working with landowners who take classes, that I would see this feedback so often where people say, "Oh, I'm looking at my forest with fresh eyes now." And that would be after, just a couple of classes. Like, people learn a little bit and it changes their entire perspective. And you don't need a degree in forestry, you don't need to be a professional or an expert, but just having a little bit of education, um, as a landowner makes such a difference.
I couldn't agree more, and that is by far my favorite comment to get on any of the classes. And someone referred to it as overcoming their tree blindness once, which I felt was like it was pretty accurate, and I remember feeling that in school and going through a forestry program, and I remember getting a comment from a landowner who said, "When I drive down the road now, I don't just see a wall of green. I'm looking at the forests, and I'm seeing what trees are there. I'm looking at the structure of the forest, how old it probably, all of these things, and of course also like the forest health issues. And then to that, it's like, well, welcome to the curse, right? Because now you're that guy that's always walking around in the forest and thinking about what kind of restoration it needs too. It's a double-edged sword sometimes, but I think it's
Definitely.
really it's just really cool to watch people kind of go through that transformation. So I wanted to kind of switch gears and think about the future, not necessarily of the program itself, but how the program is going to handle the future, so to speak. We're at a really interesting place right now with forest health in Washington State. We're dealing with a lot of issues. Climate change is the obvious one when we think about how things are going to change in the next few decades. But there's also things like new invasive species, new invasive weeds, invasive pests and disease. Emerald ash borer is present in the Pacific Northwest now. I wonder, if obviously you can't give me an example of a project yet, or maybe you can, but how is the program going to handle, a forest health assistance, initiative at a time when forest health is changing so much? I know that's a really broad question, but maybe to be more specific, are you getting interest from landowners in things like seed zone transfer or thinning stands to lower densities out of concern about drought, drought damage and resource management? And how are you handling those, knowing that this decade could look a lot different than next decade?
Well, I just want to speak for a kind of on a Western Washington perspective, and then I'd really love to hear what Gary and Ann have to say about the projects in their regions. But I think, you know, landowners are becoming more and more aware of the potential issues that are going to face them in the future. Um, and and people are, they have good ideas about where to go with that. So up in the Northwest region, uh, which includes the San Juan Islands, folks up there are really interested in wildfire risk mitigation. So they're working with the staff up there to do fuels reduction projects. Um, I know in South Puget Sound, so that's the area kind of to the west and north of where Gary and Ann work. They were really busy this year because a wildfire campaign that DNR spearheaded called Wildfire Ready Neighbors launched in 3 of their counties. So they were doing a lot of outreach, um, which generated a lot of phone calls from landowners who were already thinking about it and were excited to hear that there were more resources to work on wildfire. So, I think that's something that everybody is aware of in Western Washington, and a lot of people seem interested in getting more information about that. And then down in Southwest, like you mentioned with Emerald ash borer, I think folks are becoming aware that right now, as far as we know, Emerald ash borer isn't in Washington, but it's in Oregon. So it's likely that it'll probably reach those southwestern Washington counties first. And so they're, doing more research, staff are educating themselves on the potential risks of that and potential management actions. And again, I think it's a lot of it's starting with education with landowners, just learning more about these issues that people have identified.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I know it's a very complicated question, and there's I don't have an answer as to what things are going to look like in the next several decades, but it's just such a challenge. And when you have a program that's focused on forest health, it is just so important that we be touching base with what the landowners are facing on the ground, essentially establishing like a two-way street. And I know that you all are doing a really great job of that, and the program is built to respond from the ground up, which I think is really important.
Yeah, I wanted to say one more thing that I think you were getting at with, the education is that we're service foresters. We're not, operating in a vacuum, we couldn't. So we're lucky that we have a lot of resources that we can reach out to. We've got a forest health program within DNR. We've got researchers at WSU, and we partner with a lot of people, a lot of different organizations who also work directly with landowners. So I think, whatever these challenges are, it's really going to have to come from collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's external partners, of course, as well. We don't want to ignore the fact that for a long time, when there was only one stewardship forester with the DNR in Western Washington, there were some CD foresters. By that, I mean conservation district foresters doing some really great work and are still doing great work. And we have this wonderful landscape of organizations that are all out there just to help forest owners. And that includes WSU, DNR, conservation districts, Washington Tree Farm Program, NRCS. And it's the whole point of this podcast is to get folks like that on to talk about that. So I hope that landowners that are listening understand and are hopefully not overwhelmed by either the amount of support that's available to them. And maybe that's a place to go next. Actually, you mentioned about a landowner portal as a way to connect with this program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And where can people find it, I guess?
Yeah, so last year DNR launched what's called the Landowner Assistance Portal. So that's one place you can find us, as well as other services that DNR provides. So we've got folks in forest regulations and regulation assistance foresters who are kind of like service foresters, but they work more on the regulation side. So if you're thinking about harvesting, they can give you more information. We've got different financial assistance programs, for instance, culvert replacement. There's a program on that works directly with landowners. Community resilience is a program all about wildfire risk reduction. So all of those landowner programs are on the landowner assistance portal. And if you just go to our main website, so you could Google WA DNR, the main page, you should see the landowner assistance portal up at the top, or right at the bottom of the page. You'll find the link to that. To find a service forester directly, we have what's called the Find Your Forester tool. So if you're just interested in getting a site visit and you don't know who to call, again, just going to the main page or just Googling WA DNR Find Your Forester, that tool will pop right up. And so that's a map where you just put in your address and it'll zoom in on where you are and then bring up a whole list of all of the landowner assistance resources through DNR. And the landowner assistance, the service forester in your area should be right at the top. So they're really easy to find.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And I know, with this increased capacity, you guys have been doing some really great work. And Gary and Ann, I believe you've even been involved with, I think, Molly, most likely, putting on some workshops of your own. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did out there and if you have anything else planned?
Yeah, definitely. And we indeed coordinated with Molly on a recent effort that we held within Olympic Region. We called it the Forestry 101 Field Day, and it was intended to target, again, those small forest landowners that are looking to manage their property more effectively. And so we put together an actual, get-together field day out there on the ground to include, some basic information about what the service forestry program is and what we do, and then we had the pleasure of Molly talking about what we like to call loosely bugs and crud. Some of the forest pests that can affect a landowner's forest out there, and then we also included some mensuration techniques and led a great section on talking about, well, how do you figure out how many trees you have in your landscape, or measurements, how to basically take a plot of your forest to come up with a sample to extrapolate out to get a better sense of how many trees you have on each acre of your forest, and which species you have on your forest, how big are they, those kind of things. And also included some we had actually a pretty cool venue that we're going to take advantage of again, but we have some walking trails that were part of the day where we could actually take folks along, and walk and talk and point stuff out about forest conditions. That site, they did some recent thinning in one portion of it to address some localized root rot. So we talked about that, and then we talked about, like, what considerations can you make when you're managing forest for creating skips and gaps to create increased complexity in the stand, and maybe break up some heavy fuel areas, or as an example. And we had other stations where we could talk about pre-commercial thinning, and um, you know when you replant, how far apart do you want your trees to be, and which species mix do you want to try to incorporate when you're doing those things. So it was a great day, and we had we tried to keep a manageable amount of attendees, just because of the physical limitations of the building on the site, and wanting to have groups that weren't too large to effectively take along, and actually gather around in a spot and have a conversation along the trail, kind of thing. So anyway, it ended up being just a great day. Everybody was super appreciative, and we did end up with a waiting list of other folks that were also interested, that we had to unfortunately turn away that day. So we are certainly planning for some additional days like that to take place here in the future, for sure. But it was a great day, well received. Everybody was there and well engaged, and had tons of questions for all of us. Um, and I feel like it turned out really well.
Yeah, I really felt like that was a really positive environment, Gary. I was so happy to be involved. It really struck me. Not only was it exciting to see such a neat interagency collaboration, like we had representation from the Cloud Conservation District. There was WSU giving the bugs and crud talk, and then DNR folks talking about forest measurements and thinning practices and everything. And it all just moves seamlessly from one to another. And I was definitely struck by the engagement and, like, honestly, like the hunger of the people that were there. They were so passionate. They were so psyched to be there. And from the sound of things, yeah, that's a pretty weighty wait list that you referenced. So what would be the best way for people to find out about upcoming programming that you guys are going to be putting on?
Well, we've been working with the Conservation District quite a bit, and they've got a newsletter that comes out with our programs. We had 3 others before the Forestry Field Day. They were mini workshops, field workshops, and they're one good source of information for things that we plan. They've been very helpful in planning and helping us plan out these events, very supportive. So that's one way. And then we have our own mailing list of landowners that we've worked with in the past, and we invite them as well.
Right. And just to step back a notch, when we first started into this whole process of service forestry and Olympic region specifically, we were stepping into an environment that has been historically underserved on the forestry front. They haven't had a lot of resources available to them at those local levels. So when we contacted Clallam County once we got started, they were just absolutely thrilled to hear our voices, and know that we were coming into existence, and we had this great program where we could provide some resources to landowners that they didn't have to go pay for a consultant to get. I mean, our services are free, and then again, on top of that, we're like, hey, we'll pay for some of what you need to do, kind of thing. So it was they were just super jazzed that we were coming into the mix of things, and so they've just been a tremendous partner to work with, and really helped us on a lot of kind of some of that back end stuff, like Kelsey was referring to, where there's a lot of behind the scenes work that also takes place besides what gets presented out there on the face to face stuff. So they've been a tremendous partner, and we really have enjoyed working with them, and we have, since all this has kind of started to unfold and evolve, now we have this awesome quarterly meeting where we sit down and talk about our forest land education needs and wants and desires in the region, and strategies for how, including WSU and any of those other local constituents, how we can all collectively help get the word out there and provide these workshops like we did in the past. And our last meeting, we were talking about the coach planning course that's going to be coming up for WSU this next winter, and
Yes, thanks for the plug, Gary. I appreciate that.
oh yeah, absolutely. No, we're really excited to have that, being able to as an option in Olympic region, because it hasn't been specific to landowners in that area for many years. So it's super exciting to be able to kind of start putting all these pieces together and working with you guys and our other partners at that local level to really kind of just start putting all the pieces together and getting our collective word out there about how we can help these landowners um, do some really awesome things on their land.
I can't tell you how cool it is to see all the good work that has been done through this program in such a short amount of time, and a lot of really great people getting hired, and it's been a pleasure to get to meet you, and hopefully we'll be able to work together more closely in the future as well.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, I just, if I hire the right people, that just makes me look good, right?
It's a
so
good
so my
strategy
part of
for
the
sure.
job's easier. No, I mean, my staff and our others, um, service forestry specialists, Raleigh, have just been amazing to work with, and they've been the true, like was stated earlier, they're the boots on the ground. I mean, and right now we do have a remaining vacancy that we're hoping to get filled sometime soon, to complement Ann and Raleigh's work in our region. But I've been covering some of the kind of the southern end of stuff just due to my remote work location, and Ann and Raleigh have been covering that Clallam Jefferson component, kind of on the northeast portion of the peninsula, which in all reality is where a bulk of the interest and need is at right now. Just based on, that's where we have the most folks living that have some of those smaller landscape level landscape ownerships that are interested in doing some cool stuff on their property. So they're
Hmm.
they're definitely rock stars in my mind, and I think we're doing great things in the region for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another good plug. If any listeners are interested in a position like that, you should definitely check that out.
Yep, give me a shout.
Peninsula's a great place to live. Yeah. All right. Well, we are at time. I just wanted to thank you all for joining today, and we had an excellent conversation. Do you have any last thoughts you want to get out to the listeners before we close out?
Well, I just want to say, for people not in Olympic region, that there's a lot of, other work, education going on, both with DNR and with WSU. So if you want to learn about things going on in your region, it's really great to subscribe to the Forest Stewardship Notes newsletter or DNR's Small Forest Landowner newsletter. Both of those come out 3 times a year. I think it's every other month. And each of those has updates about what might be coming up, workshops, classes, things like that. So that's a really good way to find out about what's going on in different regions.
Yep. Yeah, the collective team, each region is doing amazing things. It's not just what's happening in Olympics. So, we have
Right.
a lot of landowners that have ownership across region boundaries too. So, they may be able to work with some different folks in each of
Right.
our regions. So,
All right. Well, with that, I will give one last call to action here and say definitely check out that newsletter that Kelsey mentioned, Forest Stewardship Notes and the Small Forest Landowner newsletter, both really great ways to get information. Also, you can check out the landowner assistance portal that we discussed, which is at dnr.wa.gov/landowner assistance portal. And of course, always go to forestry.wsu.edu And there we'll have any events that we're doing in Extension Forestry. But we also like to highlight partner events as well. So, whenever you guys are doing stuff at the DNR, we can get that up on the website and help get the word out.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, another great episode on the books. We'll close out and see you next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.